In this demonstration, we create the Open Friend Edit View event and we add an event aggregator to the Friend Storage application. After we have defined the event, we will publish that event from the navigation of Friend Storage. Alright, so let's start by creating the Open Friend Edit View event. There are many event aggregators around in the .NET world. In this example, I will use the one from the Prism library. So I right-click on the references of my Friend Storage UI project and I say Manage NuGet Packages. I browse and I type in Prism Core. Okay, here we see the Prism Core library and I install the latest stable version. Now I go to my Friend Storage UI project and I add an event folder. I just call it Events. And in that folder, I define a new class that I call Open Friend Edit View Event. Let's make this class public. And all we need to do, we need to inherit from pub sub event of type int. So we need to add a using for Prism events. This is now an event that we can use with the event aggregator, and the event has a parameter of type int. This parameter will be, in our case, the friend ID. Alright, now let's see how we can publish that event from the navigation of Friend Storage. In the previous clip, we have added this Open Friend Edit View event. Now let's raise that event from the navigation. When we open up the navigation view, we see that it contains an items control that is bound to a friend's property. This friend's property comes from the navigation view model. We see it here. It is of type observable collection of lookup item. When we go to the lookup item class, we see that it contains an ID and the display member property. Now let's jump back to the navigation view, and here we see that each of this lookup item is displayed with this data template. So for each lookup item, a button is created and that button contains a text block. As you can see, the text property of the text block is bound to the display member property of the lookup item. And you also can see that the command property of the button is bound to the Open Friend Edit View command property. So this binding looks for the Open Friend Edit View command property on the lookup item. But the lookup item does not contain such a property. It just has ID and display member. Now let's assume that this lookup item class is owned by your server logic. You just use it in your client, but you can't change this class. To get the missing Open Friend Edit View command property, we will create our own class that has also an ID property and a display member property. So the binding in the UI will still work. So let's create a new view model class and let's call it Navigation Item View Model. Okay, and in the constructor, I just take two parameters, an ID and a display member. And I store these parameters in properties. So let's use Visual Studio here to generate the ID property. Alright, in addition, I generate a display member property. Alright, now let's go to the navigation view model and let's use that new class here for the observable collection. Navigation Item View Model. Alright, let's adjust it also here in the constructor. And here, where we loop over the results from the data provider's getAllFriends method, we just need to create new navigation item view models for these lookup items. So let's create here a new view model, and let's just use friend ID and friend display member. Okay, now we have our new class here that is used. Now let's go to that class, and here we can define now an additional property of type iCommand, and we use exactly the name that is used here in the binding in the data template, openFriend edit view command. Okay. And now we just initialize that command in the constructor. We create a new delegate command. And we call the execute method onFriend edit view execute. Okay. And for sure, Visual Studio can generate that method for us. Alright. We just keep it like it is here. We throw the not implemented exception. So far so good. Now let's just see if our existing tests are still green. And yes, all the tests are still green. Now the next thing we need to do, we need to raise the openFriend edit view event in this onFriend edit view execute method. So let's look now how we can do this. Now in this onFriend edit view execute method, we want to raise our new openFriend edit view event. To do this, we need an event aggregator here. So I add an iEventAggregator constructor parameter. And you see, I need the Prism events namespace to add that interface. For now, we just do nothing. We just add the parameter so that we can write the unit tests before we implement the actual logic here. But now our code is broken in the navigation view model, where we create that navigation item view model. So let's also add a constructor parameter to the navigation view model of type iEventAggregator. Okay, and we just store that event aggregator in a field. Alright, here we have it. And now we can just pass it to the navigation item view models constructor. Alright. Now when we build our solution, we see that we have one error. That error pops up in the navigation view model tests. Here we also need to pass in the new constructor parameter, which is an iEventAggregator. So let's just create a mock here for that iEventAggregator interface. Alright, and now in the test project, we also need to add the new get package Prism Core to get the iEventAggregator interface. So let's do this. Let's right click here on the references, manage new get packages, and let's browse for Prism Core. Okay, and I install that package. Alright, now back in the test, I can add a using for Prism events, and I can just pass in the value of the object property of that event aggregator mock, which will be an iEventAggregator. Alright, now we can build the project, and let's see if our existing tests are still green. Okay, now we have prepared everything to write a unit test against that navigation item view model to see if the openFriend edit view command is raising the openFriend edit view event. Now we want to test if the openFriend edit view command of the navigation item view model is publishing our OpenFriendEditView event. So let's go to the tests project. Let's add a new test class that we call Navigation Item View Model Tests. Okay, let's make the class public and let's add a new test method that we call shouldPublish OpenFriendEditView event. Okay, now the first thing I want to do here, I create a const int for the friend ID and I just use a random value. Let's use number 7. Now I create a mock object for the event. The event is called OpenFriendEditView event. Okay, we need to use friend storage UI events. And we also need to add a using for the mock namespace. Okay. Now let's also create a mock for the event aggregator. Alright. And on that event aggregator mock, we need to set up the generic getEvent method. So let's do this. Let's call the setup method. And let's specify here the getEvent method for the OpenFriendEditView event. Okay, let me add a line break here. And when this method is called, we just return our event mock object. Alright, so the mocks are set up. Now let's create the navigation item view model. Okay, we pass in our friend ID, we pass in a display member, which can be anything, let's use Thomas, and we pass in our event aggregator mock instance. Okay, now on our view model, we use the OpenFriendEditView command and we just execute that command without a parameter. Now we want to verify that on the OpenFriendEditView event, the publish method is called with our friend ID. So let's do this. We use the event mock and we use the verify method. We want to verify that the publish method is called with our friend ID. And it should be called exactly once. Alright, so our unit test is done. Now let's run the test in the Test Explorer. And for sure, the test is red. We can see that we got a not implemented exception. Now let's implement the logic in the navigation item view model and let's publish the event in this onFriendEditViewExecute method. So the first thing we need to do, we need to store the event aggregator in a field. Alright, here we have it. Now let's use the event aggregator to call the getEvent method for the OpenFriendEditView event. We grab the event and on the event we call the publish method with the friend ID, which is stored in the ID property of our navigation item view model. So we just pass in the value of that property. So we are done and we can run the tests again. Alright, the test is green. Now the event is published as soon as an item in the navigation view model is clicked. So we can continue now in the main view model to grab that event to display the friend details.